Welcome to the RacketHive Podcast, the show where we dive into the world of badminton. From the basic of the brilliance of elite performance, I'm your host, Kenneth Lam, and today we have the honor of speaking with one of the legends of the sport. Our guest is Elizabeth Cann, a former international badminton player who represents England over the 2 decades. Starting her journey with coaching from her mother, she moved from Denmark from the age of 19 to train and kickstart her professional career. Elizabeth is like top 20 player globally at 5-time national championship and a Commonwealth and European medalist. Now retired, Elizabeth now is a coach. So let's welcome Elizabeth. How are you today?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really good today. Looking forward to talking about badminton.
I'm excited. Hey, Elizabeth, can you share how you first got into the badminton and what led you to pursue it as a professionally?
Yeah, definitely. So I first picked up a racket when I was really small, but that was just because I found myself in a badminton hall all the time. So my parents, both my parents and my older brother played badminton just for fun. And so as a sporty child, I did lots of different sports when I was a child, but because I was always in a badminton hall, badminton became one of those sports. So it was never the intention to have a career in the sport. But over the years, I was just so passionate about badminton. I loved it so much. And then I guess one thing led to another as time went on. And then eventually the possibility of having a career in the sport became an option for me. So it was just through, after a lot of years of competitions and hard work, that ended up happening where I was playing for England.
So you play in Denmark and then you play in England. Like, how does it how do you come back afterward?
Yeah, so I grew up in Jersey. I don't know if you know if Jersey is a small island in the Channel Islands, so just below England. And Jersey's so small that there's only so far you can go in the sport. So I used to travel to England a lot. And then I started playing for the England junior team when I was 13. Now, when I got to 19 years old, I was finished in the juniors. At that point in time, England didn't really have a proper training setup in the country, not a national hub. So I moved to Denmark, where initially I went to go and play in a club over there. And then there was an international badminton academy that was set up by a coach called Michael Kelson. And so I lived in Denmark for 3 years. And then whilst I was in Denmark, they got the national training centre up and running in England. And so after those 3 years, I moved to England and then trained there for the bulk of my career.
Amazing. I bet as a professional player, you have a lot of injury. I guess for every kind of level of player, injury is it's scalable. If you're just beginner, of course, you got no injury. Could you tell us what kind of injury that you have in the past and throughout your whole career? How do you stay motivated when you get injured?
Yeah, it's a good question. So my back, I had different sorts of injuries, but the main injury that I had was my back. So I had 2 bulging discs in the lower part of my back, and that happened when I was about 19, 20. But I was very fortunate that I managed to manage those injuries all the way through and be a singles player all the way through until my early 30s. So I used to have a lot of physio sessions, a lot of chiropractor, osteopath. I used to go to a sports doctor in Germany twice a year, roughly, to go and see him. And then most importantly, I had to make sure that I was very conditioned when I was training and playing. So I had to be very strong in my core, very mobile and strong. So I had to really take care of, once I've done my main training session of the day, I also have my rehab sessions to do, which can be a bit tedious and a little bit boring because it's just these little exercises that you have to do. However, it's those exercises that were so important that allowed me to keep on playing for the long run. And like you mentioned, how do I stay most motivated? Well, I guess I just had to keep really clear on what I was trying to achieve in the long run, because sometimes there were months at a time. At its worst, I had a whole season out of the game. And I wasn't allowed to just go off on holidays. I still had to stay at the national centre because I had to go to the physio every day and do all my little exercises. and I was watching all the rest of my team training and they're all improving and I wasn't improving, I was just trying to get my back better. But, it was, if I considered the thought of giving up at that point in time, then I just couldn't bear the thought of that. And that was what kept me going to fight and get back.
Did you say it happened on 19 or 20 years old? Or?
Yeah, I first felt back pain when I was about 20, probably.
Oh.
And so I just carried on playing. It wasn't bad enough to stop me, but that's when I started having physio.
Oh.
And it was when I was, I would say 23. That was when my back really went and I had a whole year out.
Right. Yeah. Okay. What tell us about like the rehab session, like what does it look like? Can we do it at home if we are not a national player like you? Like, what does the process look like?
Yeah, so you can definitely do it at home for sure, because it's usually small exercises that you do where you're just using your body weight, or sometimes you've got these little rubber bands that you put around your ankles and things. It really depends on what part of your body you're trying to either rehabilitate or you're trying to prevent injury from.
So it's a back that you injured before, right?
Yeah, so for the back,
you're doing right now to like strengthen the core.
Yeah, exactly. So lots of different core exercises, but it wasn't just your standard sit-ups. Yeah, I had to do those as well, but lots of core stability exercises. So you could probably look on YouTube or somewhere or just online somewhere and find like core stability. And then it's really working on the more intricate muscles and whatever, like deep inside the core, so that it can protect the spine and to keep that structure strong inside. But it was also important for me to make sure that my hips and everything were still flexible. So I needed to keep strong core and mobile and flexible in the hips. So stretching for the hips, but also lots of core exercises, lots of core stability, lots of balance work. Yeah, so that was like something regular.
Back in the days, how much time do you play and how much time do you spend in the rehab?
Oh, so if I'm in full training and I'm not actually injured, but I'm just maintaining, then it would really depend what part of the season you're at. So if you are off season, so you're in like your hard training block, they can be long days, like long training sessions, like 2 to 3 training sessions in a day. We could be on court for 3 hours in the morning. And then in the afternoon, there's another 3 hours of on court and physical training. Sometimes it could be like, I used to have another coach. I used to train with a high jumper, and I did a lot of physical training with him. And sometimes we would be training for like 5 hours, could be even longer sometimes. And then the rehab, it would depend. If I was not injured, then I would just maybe do like 20-30 minutes of core. But if I was injured, it would be maybe more of that or more frequent. But when you're on season, your most importantly is you want to be very sharp, very quick, and very fresh. So your sessions are going to be much shorter, but you're going to keep the intensity there when you're training. Whereas when you're in off season and it's a lot of hard, heavy training, it's not so much speed. It's more about the endurance and building up the foundations again. So on season training blocks could be like 1 to 2 hours on court. Same with physical. It might just be an hour physical, maybe 2 hours, but you want to keep it sharp.
Right. Interesting. Because me, as in like amateur experienced player, what I do is just 5 seconds before and after the call, right? On the stretching. So that's something that's very interesting to know for everyone. Like as in like if you really contribute like your time in playing badminton, that's how much time that you should be doing in the stretching part. As in a beginner, as in a skill wise for beginner, what do you think that is most important skills and habit that they should focus to build a strong foundation in badminton?
Yeah, so if you're a beginner, you want to concentrate on all the staple shots. So that's going to be the clear. So you're able to hit from back to back over your opponent's head. Okay, this can be quite tricky for people to develop. First of all, some people can get it easily, but other people, it can be one of the harder shots to learn. Then we have the drop shot, where you're hitting from the back down soft. Then the net shot, a little soft one at the front. And then we want to be able to lift it from the front up to the back. And then maybe the smash, but that's probably comes next. So clear, drop shot, net shot, and lift. I would say they're your first 4 shots to learn.
Amazing.
And then I would say alongside the shots, you need to learn your footwork. A lot of people find footwork really boring and really tedious, and it's quite a little bit of hard work. But I can honestly say my experience from coaching, the people who are much more willing to practice the footwork are those who definitely improve the most. The people who don't really want to do that bit, they're never as smooth moving around the court. And when you're not smooth around the court and you don't have the speed around the court, it's harder to execute the shots with high quality. So yeah, those 4 shots plus the footwork.
All right, I got it here. It's like footwork, clear shot, drop shot, and what's the other 2 again? Sorry about that.
Net shot and lift.
And lift. There you go. Okay. So for for intermediate player, I guess the footwork and that 4 shot is the basic part for them. What additional thing they should do that graduate from beginner to intermediate?
Okay, so then you can think about adding in the smash, because the smash then helps you to finish off the rally, and it's also a change of pace. Then we've got the flat drive in the mid-court, so you can add that one in. And then maybe we can add in a net kill. When we're at the front and somebody hits it a little bit high to you, then you're able to just kill it down onto the ground.
Amazing. That would be great, guys. So we have the basic with the footwork and also the flat drive.
Yeah, drive. Yeah,
and then kill and smash as well. There you go. And how about to graduate to advanced level? Like, what would that be?
Yeah. Okay, so then I would say instead of doing a basic drop shot, you're then going to think about doing what we call a slice. So it's the way you hit the drop shot is slightly different, and you cut on the feathers of the shuttle, and that brings the shuttle down a lot quicker. Then when you play a net shot, you're going to spin the shuttle over the net. And then you would think about things like when you do your clear, rather than just a standard clear, you're going to have different types of clears. You're going to have what we call a punch clear. So that's where you're very much just using your wrist, and there's a lot of quick pace in it. You'll vary the height of your shot. Sometimes it's flat, sometimes it's higher. Sometimes the lift is flat, sometimes it's higher. And then we add in some deception. So also when you play your shots, maybe you hold a little bit longer before you actually strike the shuttle. And what that actually does is it breaks up the rhythm of your opponent. So their movement becomes a little bit jerky and fragmented, like it makes them stop and start on the spot and they can't get a smooth rhythm. And when you make your opponent's movement, lose the rhythm, that then becomes a lot physically harder for them as well. So it becomes, a lot of people don't realize how much skill is involved in badminton. And when you really get into it, it's a very skillful sport, and there are lots of different nuances within it.
That's where the fun part begins after you learn the advanced level, right?
Yeah.
So just a summary is about the slice, cut, spinning, net shot, and clear push and deception for the advanced player.
Yeah.
Where do you think the consistency lies into? Is it just like training? Without training, we can achieve consistency. Or do you think there's anything that we can do, as in like if we don't train, that we can still achieve consistency?
You can't really hide from the training. You have to put in the training, and you build up the muscle memory of being able to execute all of the shots. And when you've got a good technique, so it's ideal if you can get a coach, at least in the early stages, to help you get the techniques trained correctly in the first place. That helps with consistency. But also something that really influences consistency is how focused you are when you're on the court, because sometimes a lot of people can make very unnecessary mistakes, just suddenly hit it right out the side of the court, and it's not necessary. Sometimes we make mistakes because we're put under pressure, but sometimes we just make mistakes because for no particular reason. Well, actually the reason is because you might be unfocused, and so it's therefore, if you're highly focused on where you're trying to place the shuttle all the time, then the more clear you are on exactly where you want it to go, eventually the more likely your shots are to group into those particular areas. I think in the early stages, people are very concerned about just getting the shuttle back and over and in. And that's perfectly fine, because you've got to start somewhere. And then as you build up your ability of playing all of the shots and you build up your ability to move around the court, you suddenly find that you have like more time to think. And it feels like you've got more space, more time to react, because you're quicker off the mark to get to the shuttle and you have more composure. And so when it gets to that stage, then you can really start to think about your accuracy and having a lot more focus and clarity when you play.
Amazing. Here's some advanced question maybe that our listener might want to know. I think like from transitioning from intermediate to advanced player, of course, like we mentioned about spinning, clearing, and deception. But I think like having someone else to really break through the psychological like perfect moment of not lifting but doing net like flat drive, like what do you think that can help them transition from, say, hey, stop lifting? I mean, otherwise other people will just smash kill the shot. Like what are the things that stop? Why do people keep lifting? Maybe that's the question.
I think, first of all, I think it can maybe initially be reactive, because when you move into the front of the court and you're moving quickly and maybe you're a little bit under pressure, to play a net shot, there's a conflict in it, because it's a soft shot. You're moving quickly, but you then have to execute a soft, very controlled shot. So that's where badminton is somewhat complicated, because a lot of sports are either all about speed or maybe all about skill, whereas badminton has a combination. So when you first start out and you are just running quickly, trying to get the shuttle back, the reaction is to just hit it out the way. And so you almost have to just train yourself you have to let go of the outcome. So when you do practice or you're playing some games in your club, then you say to yourself, right, I'm going to try and play a net shot as many times as I can. Even if you lose the rally, even if it goes in the net, even if it's a bit too high and they smack it down at you, the more you push yourself to do that, eventually you'll learn to play a good quality shot whilst being under pressure. And it's only by trying it out and allowing yourself to make mistakes that eventually you'll improve in that situation. But the first step is the awareness that you're doing too much lifting in the first place. And then sometimes you have to learn to relax into what feels like a pressure situation.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I think I got asked by someone else this question before. That's why I'm just asking you again.
Yeah.
I think one of the problem is that a lot of people that want to do that, they're just playing an easy game. They're not really playing seriously. Yeah. And that's why they're just not used to that kind of like pressure while being relaxed. They're just always relax, but not pressure while relaxed. I think that's one problem, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are depends who you're playing. If you're playing against people who aren't as strong as you, then there is no pressure on you.
There's no point to do a flat drive, right?
And then if you are playing, so it's good to have a variety of opponents that you play against. Sometimes it's good to play where the game feels easy, because that's a clear opportunity to say, right, every time it comes to the front, I'm going to play a net shot. And then it's again good to play against people who are much better than you, because you get to practice the same thing whilst being under more pressure.
Yeah, that's one thing that you guys can learn. Always play more seriously if you want to improve your game.
Yeah.
Next is like the perfect moment from just using the body movement to whisk. Like, what do you think that, like, why people start using the whisk, like, and rather than just using the whole full momentum?
So when you just use the wrist, your opponent has less time to react, because when you use the whole body, they know when you're about to strike the shuttle because you're using the whole arm is swinging through. But when you just use the wrist, it's just a sudden, quick motion that happens. The other time, so you can choose, sometimes you just choose when you've got plenty of air time and the shuttle's traveling to you. Sometimes you use the whole motion, sometimes you just use the wrist. But the other time when you almost definitely have to use the wrist is when you don't have much air time. So if somebody hits quite quick and flat to you, then that's when you have to use the wrist. And if you haven't developed the ability to just use the wrist, that's when people end up making mistakes, because they're trying to do their whole arm swing and they just simply don't have the time to do that. And then the shuttle, they completely mistime the shuttle. So that's why it's useful to be able to use the wrist as well. And this ties in with your racket carriage. So there's another piece when you become more advanced. A lot of people have their racket hanging down by their feet, but a more advanced player will always know where they're positioning their racket. So that way, if something comes quick and flat to you, you're ready with your racket to cut that out. Whereas if your racket's down by your feet, then it goes behind you, and then you're going to be in trouble from there.
Good tips. That is definitely a good nugget. Okay, so we have a lot of like advanced technique that we focus already. Like, what about like mindset and mental preparation, as in like reaching the top? Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, I would say I would absolutely suggest that people work on their mindset just as much as they work on their skill set, because you get to a point where you get to a level where you've got the same skill level as everybody else, roughly speaking. And therefore, what is it that determines who's going to win, who's going to stand on the podium, who's going to be in the finals? And then that's where your mindset is the piece that pushes you above the rest or not. I would say something that's really useful. Well, first of all, you have to control your emotions when you can feel the nerves kicking in and you're under pressure, and when it really means something to you. So controlling your breathing in that instance can also help to slow down your brain waves and help you to think clearly and calmly. But a really useful tool for athletes to use is visualization, where you really visualize and see yourself executing the game how you want to do it. Or you can use visualization to learn a particular skill and execute a skill at a high level. And you want to bring in all of your senses, like the sound, the touch, the feel of it all. And so make it as real as possible. Just like close your eyes, relax, and then get that vision in your mind. And the more times you can do it, I mean, there's been studies that show your body cannot tell the difference between what you physically do and what you imagine you do. So people, it's a great thing to do when you're injured and you can't be on the court. If you imagine yourself and you visualize all those things that you would be doing on the court, you are actually still training yourself. So then when you actually are on the court physically training and you're using visualization and you're practicing controlling your breath and staying calm under pressure, then you start to pull all the pieces together.
Wow. I mean, that's something that I've never heard before, as in like a experienced player. This is something that, as in like, if you really want to get to the next level, that's what it takes to get there. As in the same thing that I mean, Elizabeth just say, you can almost get to the same level, right? To be fair, like everyone is just like, they can learn that much if you, I mean, the place that we play, like if you are in that club, the best five is almost the same, to be fair. There's not much. I think it's the mindset is that set them apart, that they can win each other. They all know the deception, they all know the ways, everyone is learning the same thing, and that's why the mindset is super important.
Yeah.
Amazing. Since transitioning from coaching, what have you found most rewarding about helping others develop their skills in badminton?
I think it's just really nice to see when somebody is really passionate about the sport. And it doesn't matter what level they are. You know, they could be playing for their country or they could be a complete beginner. But when it means something to somebody and you see how much effort they put into it, and maybe how challenging something is for them to learn to do, and the day when it clicks and they learn that new thing, or they get picked to play their first match or accepted into their first club or stand on the podium. And I know that I've been a part of that, helping them to do that, then that is rewarding for me, because I know what that felt like on my journey. And I had a lot of people being a part of my journey. And so for me to be able to be a part of helping somebody else to achieve something that means something to them, then that's really nice to see,
Amazing. It's just like a extracted version on like how you keep unlocking a skill for a baby, and that is so rewarding from 0 to 100, right?
Yeah. And one thing I've learned as a coach is, even when it looks like someone's just not going to get it, it's always at that point that they suddenly get it.
Yeah.
So it's my job to always believe in them, because I know the power of, I know what it feels like when somebody doesn't believe in me compared to when they do believe in me, So my job as a coach is to always believe in them.
I believe you have a very high patience and emotional intelligence there to really raise a lot of people there in your club. Yeah. That's how you qualify to become a good coach. Yeah. How do you approach coaching differently for beginner versus most advanced player? We did mention about all the skills, right? So, but because I guess like coaches knows all that's where the skills, but what really set you apart from other coaches?
What sets me apart? Do you know, I think I understand people quite well, and I think I'm quite good at communicating what I'm trying to communicate and seeing when it's not quite landing with them and finding another way to communicate it, and maybe saying the right thing at the right time to somebody, because maybe I can see if they need a mental shift, and that's the piece that's holding them back versus the physical skill itself. So I think that piece very much helps, because ultimately you're dealing with people and everybody is so different. So to have just exactly the same approach with everybody just isn't the way, or it's not the most effective way, because it will work really well with some people, but not well at all with other people, because that just doesn't resonate with them. So I think there are many coaches out there that can teach all the skills and all of the footwork, but I think what makes it click for people is how you work with them as a person.
I think because you being a female have a sixth sense that we don't have.
Yeah.
That's the most important things. That would really give you an edge already in advance on how you deal with people, and that is, and being a mother as well in the future. Or are you a parent?
No, not yet.
No. Okay. In the future, that will maybe. But here's a follow-up question. This is a question for parent. For parent who want to get their children to get started young, what would you say to convince them to get started young? Because everyone knows that you have to get started young, but why not karate? Why not like tennis? Why should be badminton if they want to start young?
I think badminton's actually just a really interesting sport. There's so many different parts to the sport. It's physical, It's technical, it's tactical, it's mental. Like there are so many moving parts to it that it's just really, the more involved you get, it just becomes really, really interesting. But I would just say, look, at the end of the day, maybe badminton it depends what the child likes. Like, just get them to have a go, let them try it out, and try to find the balance of encouraging them. If they choose badminton as their sport, encourage them, but don't go so over the top that the child feels like they've got so much pressure on them, because sometimes I see that, and then that hinders their development because they're so worried about what their parents are going to say if they don't do well. But I also understand, for example, when I was in junior and I was a child, I wanted to play for England. And so that required commitment from my parents, financial commitment, time commitment, take me to training all the time, fly me over to England to play tournaments. Like, it's a lot of commitment from the parents. So of course they're going to expect a certain level of commitment from me. And that's perfectly acceptable. But if it gets to the point where it has to be okay to make mistakes. It has to be okay that you don't always win, and if it's the end of the world because you've made some mistakes or you're not doing well at a period of time, there has to be some grace there, like, okay, what's going on? Like, how are you feeling? What, and work with the person. Whereas if it's too heavy all the time, then sometimes I see the children just don't want to do it anymore. And then they stop because it's just, they rather just escape that pressure, or they can't relax when they're playing because they're worried about being told off all the time or something. So the balance of expecting a certain kind of level, but with some freedom within that.
Yeah, that's a very good advice there. You have a club there. Like, would you like to talk about your club and your camp?
So I have, mine is called Essential Badminton, and I deliver masterclasses and workshops, and I'm basically teaching people. Well, I have different levels that I work with. In fact, there is no age or no level that I don't work with. It can be any age, any level, and I do a variety of things. But I'm basically doing it for whether it's for 1 hour, 1 day, 2 days. I have different lengths of workshops, and it's usually standard and intermediate players, and then sometimes I'll have advanced workshops as well. And I'm basically passing on my knowledge of international badminton for over 2 decades, passing that back on to others so that they can enjoy the sport as much as me.
Can you talk about, like, what do you do in the workshop? Like, is it like a group, or is it like 1-to-1, or?
So the workshops are groups, and we work through all elements of the game. It depends how long the workshop is for as to how much we can actually cover, but it'll be different skills. Sometimes there might be a variety of level of players there. So I'll maybe teach one skill, but I start off at the most basic level, and then I bring it all the way up to the most advanced level-ish. And then each individual will take the piece where they're at. Maybe they're a beginner or they're just more standard player. And so they're going to practice at a standard level. And maybe the more advanced player is looking at the slice or the punch or, something along those lines. I'm teaching people how to move around the court correctly, how to position themselves on the court correctly, what's their tactical awareness like, what kind of mindset to have on the court. We put it together into game-like practices. So it's a blend of skill practice, physical movement, putting that all together, learning how to structure the game. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that we do.
Amazing. If you want to come to you about coaching, or just want to contact you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so they can come through my website, which is essentialbadminton.com, or they can always drop me an email at elizabethcann@mail.com.
I will make sure that we'll put that into the show notes.
Yeah.
So that's a wrap on this episode for the RacketHive Podcast. A huge thank you to Elizabeth Cann for sharing her inspiration journey and invaluable insight, whether you're just picking up a racket or striving for professional success. She's here to help, and feel free to reach out. Don't forget to like and subscribe on RacketHive Podcast for more stories, tips, and strategy from the world-class badminton players. Until next time, thank you.